Make sure that we are live streaming. Good evening, everyone. Let's check this out. Make sure that we are up and running. Haven't ran this live stream in a while, so let's do this. Let's see if we're here. And of course, everybody wants to call in just as the meeting getting ready to start. That's just the way it is. Right? Live. Everybody there?
That's just the way
We
it
are
is.
live. Very, very good. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my first live streaming show for our September class. Yes, it is August. Our first, next, and last class will be September 5th. And for my students who are thinking about signing up for the September class, I'll usually run these free classes on Monday during the month of August for those students who are looking to get a little bit more research, do a little bit more research, get a little bit more information about a class that they're going to be signing up. So I run these free live streaming classes the month before each class as a courtesy and as an extra resource for you, the potential student, to do a little bit more research. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Warren Nelson. I am the director of the school, Online Real Estate School Incorporated, and I'm also going to be your instructor. And so I'm going to be teaching you real estate. The state requires that you take a 75-hour state mandated class. In the state of Pennsylvania, it's 75-hour requirement. And in that 75 hours, you need to have a grasp and an understanding of real estate practice and real estate fundamentals. Real estate fundamentals is going to deal with the law, federal law, state law, local law, fair housing law, discrimination law, agency law, contract law, the list goes on. And real estate practice is going to deal with the contracts, the language of the contracts, the home inspection, the title report, the process of representing a buyer or a seller, a landlord or a tenant through the process of the real estate journey. So real estate practice and real estate fundamentals is the two required classes in order to take the state exam. Once you take the state exam and pass the state exam, you will be a licensed real estate professional in the state of Pennsylvania. And from that point forward, you are legally entitled to earn compensation in the real estate arena. So this is what you're making your investment in, ladies and gentlemen. And so I'm going to make this just like a class and make sure that you understand some of the things that you're going to be learning in my class. In my class, I'm going to teach memory techniques, long-term memory techniques, short-term, long-term. And you and I basically, for the most part, we use our short-term memory. But short-term memory will escape us. And this is why when somebody gives you their name, you forget their name almost immediately. You ever read something and after you're done reading it, you got to read it again because you completely forgot everything that you just read. Nothing stuck into the database. Well, that's because of short-term memory. And we did not learn how to use our long-term memory. Once we learn how to focus and learn to use our long-term memory, then everything will be compartmentalized. We'll be able to retrieve it. We'll be able to memorize things much, much easier. So in the class, we're going to teach long-term memory techniques, and these techniques will help you absorb the information, retain that information, and recapture that information when it's time to take the state exam. You won't be doing one of these things. Oh, what was that again? I can't remember. That's short-term memory escaping you. Long-term memory, it will come right back to you. It will be compartmentalized. So these are the things that we're going to be talking about in the class, starting off with using our memory techniques. Then we're going to talk about certain things like bundle of legal rights, which is the deed. Let me give you an example. You want to buy a property and you want to turn it into a rooming house. Can you do that? No, not legally, because of zoning laws. Zoning tells you what you can and cannot legally do with the property. So if the property is zoned, let's say single family residential, and you purchase this property, the only thing that you can do with that property is use it as a single family residential property. You would not be able to convert it into a duplex, a triplex, a rooming house, unless you were able to change the zoning. In order to change the zoning, you would need a variance. So we'll talk about zoning law and the legal use of the property. Can the buyer do what they want with the property after they purchase the property? Just like these Airbnbs. Well, the city's coming down pretty hard on these Airbnbs. Now we have to have legal zoning as a hotel, and the insurance, homeowners insurance, needs to be aware that you're using the property as an Airbnb as well. And of course, that will change the insurance requirement of how much insurance, homeowners insurance you need on that property as a minimum requirement. So when you decide that you want to get into real estate and start buying property, renovate them, and rent them out, one of the first things you need to know is zoning. Is the property legally zoned for multifamily? All right, duplex, triplex, quadruplex. Does it have a multifamily zoning, or is it zoned single family residential? Maybe you would like to run a little business. Maybe you would like to do a barber shop downstairs and live upstairs. Well, now we need what's called mixed use zoning so that we can do residential and commercial in the property. So one of the first things that we learn is zoning laws and what the property is legally zoned for and what we can legally do with it. So you can't let somebody buy a property thinking they can turn that property into anything they want to turn it into after they buy it. That would be incorrect. The next thing is the deed, the bundle of legal rights, the deed, the deed, the deed. So here's the question. What's the difference between deed and title? Because we hear this all the time. I have the title to the property. I just got the deed to the property. What's the difference between deed and title? Here's what I want you to understand. The deed is the written instrument, the legal paperwork that transfers ownership from the seller to the buyer. We sell vehicles by title, but we sell property by deed. D-E-E-D, the deed, the deed, the deed. And before we ever buy an investment property, before we ever imagine how much money we're going to make on this property, we need to make sure that we have the correct deed to the property. That is the legal ownership of that property, the deed. So if the deed is the legal ownership of property, what's title? Title is a process of making sure the deed is good. Title search, abstract title, title certificate, title insurance, title report. All this is a process of making sure the deed is good. So when you hear title and deed, title is the process of making sure the deed is good. Title search, abstract the title report, title certificate, title insurance. All this is a process. But ultimately, it all comes down to the deed. The deed is what transfers that property. And we call this delivery and acceptance in the real estate business, ladies and gentlemen. The minute that the seller delivers the deed to the buyer and the buyer accepts that deed, that buyer becomes the owner of the property at that moment. It's called delivery and acceptance. That's the legal term. And it is not the buyer's property until this moment occurs. The seller delivers the deed to the buyer and the buyer accepts the deed. It becomes the buyer's property at this moment in time, delivery and acceptance. What we need to do in the real estate business, ladies and gentlemen, is make sure the deed is good and marketable. We have to make sure that there's no liens, no judgments, no encroachments on that deed that would prevent the buyer from owning and using that property legally. And so our job in the real estate, and that's where real estate practice comes in, is to make sure that we understand the deed. We understand there's no liens, no judgments, no encroachments that would hinder the buyer's legal possession of that property. And so that's where we come in. And that's what this class tries to teach you. My class will teach you that you understanding the bundle of legal rights, starting with the deed. So we as real estate agents, we don't really focus too much on the property. That's the buyer's job. Let the buyer imagine how they're going to paint the walls, what they're going to do with the property, how they're going to design it. Our job is to make sure that the deed is good, that the legal transfer takes place, and that our clients, rather it be buyer or seller, is protected through the process. And this is why you would be getting a real estate license. But more important, even if you choose not to get a real estate license, having this knowledge is very important if you ever decide to buy your own property, help somebody in your family buy a property. This way here, you have this fundamental understanding of the process, even if you decide you don't want to get a real estate license. But this class does give you that benefit. So this is not an investment class or a get-rich-quick class. This is a class that is mandated by the state, a requirement that the state requires that you take. This teaches you what you can and cannot do legally in the real estate arena. That's how valuable this course and this class is. That's why it is a required class. Now let's talk about a mortgage, because I see a lot of people get the deed and the mortgage confused. What's the difference? Well, we already established that the deed transfers ownership. That's what gives you possession of the property. But the mortgage is a loan on the property. You get a 30-year mortgage. That is a loan to buy the property. And the mortgage itself, because you get two instruments, you get a mortgage and you get a note. The mortgage is a legal document that allows the lender to foreclose on your property should you default on the loan. The lender doesn't own the property. The lender's name is not on the deed. The buyer's name's on the deed. The buyer only has a loan from the lender for the next 30 years. And so don't get the deed, the ownership of the property, and a loan to buy the property, the mortgage, confused. So the mortgage is a loan, 15-year, 20-year, 30-year loan. And the mortgage itself is a legal document that the lender puts together, that you sign, giving the lender the right to go in front of a judge and foreclose on the property to recapture their loan. They don't want your property. That's not what they want. So the lender doesn't want your property. The government doesn't want your property. What they want is their investment, their money back. So when you receive a mortgage to buy a property, the lender places a lien against the property, not ownership. They don't own it. Their name's not on the deed. They place a lien against the property, and that lien is collateral. So the property becomes security for the loan. And if you don't make the payments, then the bank has a right through that legal document known as a mortgage to foreclose on the property to recapture their investment. And so that is known as a mortgage. So you now have a little bit of understanding of the difference between a deed and title, the difference between a deed and a mortgage. Now, let me ask you this question. In the state of Pennsylvania, when you buy a property and you receive a 30-year mortgage to buy this property, do you own that property day one, or do you own that property 30 years later when you make your final payment? So you get a 30-year mortgage, a loan to buy the property. In Pennsylvania, do you own the property day one, or do you own that property 30 years later when you make your final payment? In the state of Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen, we are known as a lien theory state. Remember I said a little earlier that the bank places a lien against the property? Well, in the state of Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen, you get the deed to the property day one. You become the owner of that property day one. So what, you have a 30-year mortgage, a loan. Don't get the loan and the deed confused, the mortgage and the deed. So the mortgage is a loan, but the mortgage, the lender doesn't own the property. You own it. So in Pennsylvania, we are known as a lien theory state. And in Pennsylvania, you get the deed day one. You become the owner of that property. That's in your name. It's recorded in your name. And so it doesn't matter that you got a 30-year mortgage. You could refinance, you could pay off early, you could pay it off, doesn't matter. But you become the owner of the property day one in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, other states, Georgia, Texas, and so forth, are title theory states. In those states, you don't become the owner of the property until you make your final payment or a significant amount of payment satisfactory to the lender. So in a title theory state, you don't get the property, you don't become the owner until 30 years later. But in Pennsylvania, you become the owner day one because we are a lien theory state and the bank only has a lien against the property. All right. So see, you just had in these first 13 minutes, you just learned a little bit about real estate. So you learn that you can't use real estate for any purpose that you want to. It has to have the legal zoning for the use of the property. You can't take a single family property and make it a rooming house or a duplex. You can't use it as an Airbnb. You can't use it for mixed use unless it is zoned. It is allowed to be used for that purpose. Otherwise, you can only use it for what it's zoned for. If it's a single family property, residential, that's all you can buy the property and use the property as. If you want to change the zoning, you need what's called a variance. And the variance will give you the relief to change the current use of the zoning property and change it to something else. Not an easy process to change the zoning and get that variance, but this is known as the bundle of legal rights. We now know that we sell property by deed, not by title. Deed. Title is the process to make sure that the deed is good. We now know that we need a good and marketable deed that has no liens, no judgments, no encroachments, anything that would interfere with the buyer's rights to the property. We also understand that we own the property day one, not 30 years later. And we also understand that we are a lien theory state in the state of Pennsylvania, not a title theory state. So just in this 15 minutes, you probably have learned more about real estate than you thought you knew. And there's plenty more to go, ladies and gentlemen. This is why it's a 75-hour class, state requirement, right? Because there's so much more to talk about. Fair housing laws, agency laws, contract law, fair housing laws, discrimination laws. So there's a lot of process that you need. And that's why I said, ladies and gentlemen, don't be afraid of the knowledge, absorb it. Even if you don't want to get a real estate license, you should be gaining this knowledge just to have it, just to make sure that you are armed with this information. And one thing about my class, ladies and gentlemen, once you take my class, you never have to pay for it again. You can come back to my classes again and again and again, anytime you want, free of charge. So if you're forgetting information, you want to recap, maybe you had to wait months before you could take the state exam and you want to refresh, you're able to come back to my classes free of charge. I'm one of the only schools in the state of Pennsylvania that offers this option to you, ladies and gentlemen. So I would like you to keep that in mind as well. A contract, especially in real estate, and mostly everything, but especially in real estate, needs really 3 ingredients for a contract to be legal. The 3 ingredients would be date, signature, and consideration. These would be the 3 major ingredients. Lack any one of them, a date, a signature, consideration, then we don't really have a legal contract in the state of Pennsylvania. So we understand what a date and a signature is, but what is consideration? Consideration is something of value. You ever see a property transfer hands for $1? In the state of Pennsylvania, that $1 It's considered consideration, and it made it a legal transfer, a legal contract. There's no such thing as a no money down deal. There's no such thing as a overnight flip, buy today, sell tomorrow. Not legally, ladies and gentlemen. The title company won't let you transfer that deed for 30 to 90 days after you receive it. So a lot of these investment classes that are teaching these techniques, buy with no money down, don't ever own the property, and try to work out a wholesale retail flip, that's illegal. And the part that makes it illegal is you practicing real estate without a license. The process is not illegal, but you trying to earn compensation between a buyer and a seller, you're trying to put two parties together, then you're practicing real estate. You're doing exactly what a real estate licensee is supposed to do, put a buyer and seller together. So if you think that you could do a wholesale retail flip where you won't own the property and you can make $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 just for putting them together, that is illegal. That's called practicing real estate without a license. You can't practice medical without a license. You can't practice law without a license. And in this state, ladies and gentlemen, you can't practice real estate without a license. What is practicing real estate? As soon as you are trying to earn compensation, any kind of compensation, a bonus, a commission, a kickback, anytime that you are trying to receive compensation, that is practicing real estate. Two things that you don't need a real estate license for is to buy or rent out property that's in your name. If the deed's in your name and you own that property, then you don't need a real estate license to sell your own property, and you don't need a real estate license to rent out your property, and you can earn all the compensation that you want, providing you own that property, the deed's in your name. But if you try to do this for your next door neighbor, that's not your property, and you're trying to earn compensation, that's practicing real estate without a license, and that is the illegality of it, all right? Compensation, trying to earn any kind of compensation without the law, without the license, is the illegality of it. So when you hear about these wholesale retail flips and somebody tells you it's illegal, it's not the process of wholesale retail flipping the property. That's not illegal. It's doing it without a license because it's not your property. If it was your property and the deed was in your name, then you could do it. So these are the things that you will learn in the class under what the law of what you can and cannot do in real estate. Let's say you want to do property management and you want to rent out somebody else's property for them, and you're taking compensation for renting out that property, or you're doing the lease and you're taking the security deposit. Well, I can tell you right now, you better have a real estate license. If that property's not in your name and you're taking the lease, you're taking a security deposit, and you're taking compensation for managing the property, and you don't have a real estate license, you're practicing real estate without a license. It is a criminal offense in the state of Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen. And so you might get away with it for a while, but I assure you, tenants, especially sour tenants, will change that animosity and that ambiguity. And so now somebody's going to know that you're doing it, especially if your signature is on the lease and you don't own the building and you don't have a real estate license. That is definitely going to come back to haunt you. Excuse me. Ginger ale, so it doesn't show up too well on the green screen. So, all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, so see what you're learning. You're already learning the things that you can and cannot do in the real estate arena, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about the difference between a customer and a client in this business. Everybody's a customer. Everybody we talk to. So we talk to friends at the ball game. We talk to friends at work. We talk to friends at church or anywhere. Anybody that we talk to about real estate and we're licensed real estate professionals, those would be considered customers, just people that we're talking to. We owe the customer fair and honest dealings, but a client is someone who signs a contract for us to represent them. And in this state, ladies and gentlemen, This is known as agency law, buyer agent, seller agent. And so now what this is known, this agency is really known as an employment contract. And once somebody hires us to represent them, to sell their property, to help them purchase a property, they need to have a agency agreement, a business relationship agreement, so that they understand what they're supposed to receive as far as services from that real estate brokerage or that real estate agent, and what those services will cost them. Because there's no such thing as free, ladies and gentlemen. You can't get free water, you can't get free air, not in this country anymore, ladies and gentlemen. And the only thing that you're going to get free is bull. All right. Everybody will tell you no charge, this is free of charge, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you get hit with a charge at the back end somehow or another. There's no such thing as free. We cannot work for free. Remember, I told you already that a contract has to have 3 ingredients: date, signature, and consideration. That means the buyers have a service to pay for, sellers have a service to pay for. If they believe that they're getting something for free, they already should know, at least with my class, that they're not, because they don't have a legal contract for free. There's no consideration. Has to be at least $1 charge or something of value, but nothing for nothing in this world and in this state, ladies and gentlemen, under contract law. Nothing for nothing. So there's no such thing as free. That's one of the first things that you need to understand. Another thing that you need to understand is the difference between the buyer and the seller. A lot of people think they can do these things on their own. They don't understand the gravity of the contract. They don't understand the consequences of a contract. And to prove it to you, a lot of times when somebody's looking to buy a property, the first thing they do is they call the sign on the lawn. They call the sign in the window. They call the ad. The problem that the buyer's making at this very moment is they're calling the broker or the agent who's representing the seller. The sign on the lawn, the sign in the window, the ad that you're reading is the brokerage and the agent who's representing the seller. And their job is to get this property sold for as high as they can because their client's the seller. Who's representing you, the buyer? And so in this arena, buyers need representation. So we as licensed real estate professionals want to make sure that buyers as well as sellers both have representation so that their interest is protected, the deed is good, the process is good, and everybody's protected through this process. And so that is the real estate arena, making sure that the buyers understand what they need, what the seller needs as well. So agency is an employment contract with the buyer or the seller, and then this becomes a client. They're no longer a customer. Customers, everybody we talk to. But the person who signs our business relationship agreement, our agency agreement to allow us to represent them, becomes the client. And things change now. Now we owe the client what's called fiduciary responsibilities, legal responsibilities. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, now that they're our client, we're going to have proprietary information. We're going to have their date of birth, their social security number, their income, their bank statements, and we are legally responsible for the protection of this information and to make sure that our clients do not become victims of identity theft or wire scams or anything like that. So once we have a client and we are now representing the client, we will now have legal responsibilities we call fiduciary responsibilities. Obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accountability, recordability. And so these will be our legal responsibilities to our client. So this class is to make sure that you understand the difference between a customer and a client. We owe the customer fair and honest dealings, but our client, because we'll have such proprietary information about our client, we have legal responsibilities to the client. And because of this, now we're entitled to earn compensation because we now understand our legal responsibilities and how to represent the client. And this is how we make the money in the real estate arena, ladies and gentlemen. So knowledge is power. Every millionaire, billionaire, and trillionaire, ladies and gentlemen, have real estate in their portfolio. They really didn't make their money by stocks, bonds, gold, silver, digital currency. Those were part of a portfolio. But the major part that usually makes people very, very rich is real estate, equity. All right. Let me give you an example. How many of you ever heard this expression? I bought this property for $100,000. My neighbor just sold for $280,000. That's $180,000 difference between what they paid for the property and what they can sell the property or get for the property in a refinance right now. So they just made $180,000 in this one little example. Bought this property for $100,000. My neighbor just sold for $280,000. I'm thinking about maybe selling my property. You now know you could probably get $280,000, maybe more, maybe less, but that's more than $100,000 that you paid for the property when you paid for the property. This property, without you doing anything, has just made you, in this example, $180,000. Yet you might not have bought this property as an investment. You bought it to live in it. You bought it to raise the family. And all these years later, it's worth so much more than what you paid for it. This is called equity. The difference between what you paid for your property and what it's worth today. And if you have several properties in your portfolio, that equity can build you lines of credit. You can do refinancing. You can sell the property. I'm a big proponent on owner financing. I do a lot of teaching of owner financing. Why be a landlord? Why rent out the property when you could be the bank? What would you prefer to do? Would you prefer to be the landlord, or would you prefer to be the bank? Because when the bank makes a loan, they don't change the light bulbs, they don't mow the lawn, they don't answer the phone. The bank just receives residual income month after month after month. You make your payments to the bank and you ask nothing of the bank as far as your property goes. But your landlord, you want them to do this, you want them to do that. And the landlord has to pay the taxes on the property. The landlord has to pay the insurance on the property. The landlord has to do the maintenance, the upkeep, the evictions. Why be the landlord when you can be the bank? And so when I tell my students I'm going to teach them how to invest in real estate, this is one of the ways that I talk about understanding how not to be the landlord, understanding how to be the bank, how to receive residual income every month. That phone never rings. You never have to pay the taxes on the property. You never have to pay the insurance on the property. And this is called owner financing, deed of trust, deed in trust. All right. Remember, I told you that some states, you don't become the owner of the property until 30 years later. Those are known as title theory states. Well, when I teach you how to do owner financing, I literally teach you title theory techniques rather than the lien theory techniques. And in the title theory technique, that deed to the property will be held by a third party known as a trust or an escrow company for the purpose of the buyer and the seller in the owner financing. So it has to be done by an attorney. It's not a templated form. Purchase money mortgage, deed of trust, deed in trust, and vendor vendee. And so I teach these things in the class so that you can legally, not Slim Shady, not a technique, it's a legal process. And if you understand how to do this, you'll never be a landlord again. You'll never rent property out again. And if they don't make the payments because the deed's in trust, you get the property right back. In those title theory states, ladies and gentlemen, because we're a lien theory state in Pennsylvania, the lender only has a lien against the property. If you don't make your payment, the lender has to do foreclosure. The lender has to go to court, start the foreclosure process in order for this to go down. But in a title theory state, since you don't have the deed, it's in escrow, the bank does not have to do any legal foreclosure process if you start missing your payment. The lenders get the property right back, their collateral right back, no foreclosure. So if the lenders had their way, every state would be a title theory state, but the lenders don't have their way. So Pennsylvania is a lien theory state. And in the lien theory state, all the lender can do is place a lien against the property and go through a judicial process in order to recapture their investment. But in a title theory state, completely different story. No judicial process. They get the property right back. And when I teach you how to do owner financing, I teach you this title theory technique so that you can get the property back. Hell, if you're going to be a landlord, you got to do an eviction. And I can tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with renting out properties, if you're not familiar with property management since the pandemic, the court system is completely clogged. Completely clogged. It will take you close to a year to get somebody out of your property unless you file an ejectment. And that's going to be expensive. It will get there. Maybe you got a squatter and you want that squatter out of the property. An ejectment will work, but it's a little expensive. But it's a guarantee to get them out of the property. And so sometimes it's so hard to get a tenant out of the property right now that being a landlord and renting out property might not be the smartest idea. So if you have another way of working investment in real estate, by all means do so. Let me tell you one other thing, ladies and gentlemen. I've been doing this for 30 years. When I first started out in real estate, interest rates for a mortgage were 18 to 22%. 18 to 22%. I'm hearing boo hoo 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 with 6 and 7%. Buy, I'm telling you right now, because interest rates will continue to climb, but no big deal. Because again, as I said, interest rates were 18 and 22% at one time. Will history repeat itself? It usually does. And so, did it come to the end of the world? Did the real estate market drop off? You know what? People were getting rich when interest rates were 18 and 22%. The 80s, everybody was getting rich in real estate. Real estate was the big thing back then when interest rates were 18 to 22%. So you have to understand that interest rates don't affect the value of property. Interest rates only have a return on the investment for the lender. Is it worth making this loan to you, or yield that we recapture? And the interest rate may affect your ability to make the payments because of ratios, 28-36 ratios to start out with. But interest rates do not affect the value of the property. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you buy a property today, and let's go with 9% interest rate. All right, interest rates went up. You wanted to buy when it was 6 and 7. You wanted to buy when it was 1% during the pandemic. And you keep saying to yourself, I missed out. Interest rates are going up. I'm going to sit on the fence and I'm going to wait for interest rates to drop before I decide to buy. That's a fool's bet, ladies and gentlemen. That is how most people go broke in the stock market and in the real estate, unless you're a JP Morgan and you watch what others are doing and do the opposite. This is the time to buy when interest rates are going up. So let's just say that you buy a property now at 9% and your payments are $2,000 a month. And you wish that the payments were lower and you wish you would have bought at a lower interest rate. And 5 years from now, again, ebb and flow, history repeats itself. 5 years from now, interest rates drop to 4%. Here's a perfect time to refinance, take out the equity, and now look at. So remember what I taught you earlier? You bought a property for $100,000. 5 years, 6 years later, it's worth $200,000. Let's just make an example. Real easy numbers. You bought the property at 9% interest for $100,000. Your payments are $2,000 a month, just an example. And 6 years later, the interest rates drop to 4% and you refinance your property. Today, your property's worth $200,000. You can now refinance the value of the property, $200,000 at 4% interest, pay off that 9% interest loan. Now you got a new loan at $200,000 at 4%, and you just put $100,000 into your bank account because of the equity. You got a new $200,000 loan, which paid off the old $100,000 loan, the 9% $100,000 loan. So that gets paid off with your new 4% loan. And now you have an extra $100,000 in your bank account. That's called equity. That's how people get rich in real estate. But when you decide to wait for interest rates to drop, you are missing out on the opportunity. to capitalize on the equity. Buy. Doesn't matter what the interest rates are. Interest rates were 18 to 22%, and people were becoming millionaires when interest rates were 18 to 22%. You don't understand, ladies and gentlemen, how the rich think. You don't understand how real estate actually works. And that's why it's so important to take my class, to understand how to invest in property legally, ethically, and understand the difference. Interest rates don't affect the value of property. What affects the value of property, ladies and gentlemen? Supply and demand. It is that simple. Supply and demand. Buyer's market, seller's market. Take right now. Right now, we have more demand, more potential buyers than we have inventory supply. And so since we don't have a whole large supply of real estate for sale, and we got more buyers than we have sellers, then the sellers are able to ask ridiculous prices for their property and still get it and get multiple offers on their property because supply and demand. We have more demand than we have supply. And so I have one iPhone, ladies and gentlemen. I'm using an LG as my example. Here's my iPhone. Okay, so let's use an iPhone. I got one iPhone, ladies and gentlemen. One iPhone, and 20 people want to buy the one iPhone. What do you think is going to happen to the price of the iPhone? 20 people want to buy it. It's going to go up. That is a sample of supply and demand. I don't have a lot of supply, and I have a lot of demand. So since I have one iPhone and everybody wants to buy it, 20 people, the price is going to go up, just like in real estate. But if 20 people or one person wants to buy 20 iPhones, I got 20 iPhones and nobody's really looking to buy except for one, and I got too much supply, what do you think is going to happen with the price? It's going to go down so I can try to get rid of my inventory because I don't have a lot of demand for it. So that is what affects value, supply and demand, not interest rate. And so understanding these concepts and learning what you need to do to understand what you want to buy, what you want to purchase. Do you want to be a landlord? Do you want to be a bank? Do you understand? Would you want to wait till interest rates drop down to 1% again? I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be waiting about 40 years for that to happen. All right, give or take about 40 years. So because that is history repeating itself, the ebb and flow. What we saw earlier is the 80s coming back into play. And now that interest rates are continuing to climb, we are taking a repeat of the 80s, ladies and gentlemen. But only the person who doesn't understand real estate would be concerned with interest rates rising. If you understand real estate, you love the fact that interest rates are rising. And so you need to understand when to buy, when to sell. Watch what other people are doing and doing the opposite, because most people are herd. They're sheep. They're being led to slaughter. So you don't want to follow that crowd, ladies and gentlemen. They don't understand. They only think they understand. Here's one other thing, and I don't need to be insulting, but it is factual. Most people are only as educated as their evening news. And most of the time, people want to spout what they learned on television as some kind of gospel. Well, be careful with that, ladies and gentlemen, because most of the things that you see on TV are called programming. They're there to program your thoughts, your beliefs, your direction. That's why it's called programming. And so you be very careful about what you're hearing and seeing on television media, because it's for a design purpose. And so don't think that you're so educated by the evening news. I assure you, chances are you're not. You are just conditioned, just like schools today, ladies and gentlemen. Schools really aren't there designed to educate. It's a different format. They're there to condition, indoctrinate. Blue collar workers. Our children, the elites, say our children will be the white collar workers and your children will be the blue collar workers. Your children only need to be so educated to be the blue collar workers, so there's no sense of making sure that they're overeducated. And that is a design system. And that's why I'm very happy about my school and my students, because the students who come to my class are making an investment in themselves and in their future to make sure that they understand more than the average person, and they really understand real estate. So that's my school, ladies and gentlemen. Online Real Estate School Inc.com. I want you to look it up, ladies and gentlemen. Look at my reviews. See my reviews, see my calendar. Remember that once you pay for my class, you never have to pay for it again. The total cost of my class, it's an 8-week class. It's 4 weeks for real estate fundamentals. It's 4 weeks for real estate practice. The classes are run Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursday. And so I have 2 classes that I offer on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I have a morning class, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I also run an evening class, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. So if you choose the morning class, it'll be 4 weeks between 9 and 1, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for real estate fundamental. And then it'll be 4 weeks, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday between 9 and 1 for real estate practice. This will give you your 75 hours state required, plus all the other things that I'm going to be teaching you. Most real estate schools, ladies and gentlemen, whether they be online or in person, are designed for one thing. They're designed to prep you to take a state exam. That's basically it is, especially a 3-week class. Oh, what a waste of money, in my opinion. You're going to try to cram 75 hours into a 3-week class. The class will be too long. You're not going to be able to absorb the information. You're trying to get to the finish line without starting. And those 3-week classes, ladies and gentlemen, you get your real estate license in 3 weeks, is just a crash course to try to prep you for the exam, but it's not going to teach you how to run a real estate business. It's not going to teach you how to invest in property. And so my class is designed to do just that. My 8-week class is designed not only to prep you for the exam, but to teach you how to run a real estate business, to teach you how to invest in property. We have a whole day of math that we do. I'll teach you the techniques, the easy way of the math. Most people will always say 3 things. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at testing, or I'm not good at this or that. And so really what you are good at is excuses. And that's what most people are good at, excuses. I'll do it then. The only reason I didn't do it is because of that. The only reason, math, I'm terrible at math. I'm terrible at testing. Everybody says that. And I told you, the reason that you say that is because of the school system. They failed you at math. They didn't teach you math. They didn't teach you how to test. How they don't even want you to test anymore. They don't even want you to know that it's an entitlement program. You get a degree, you get a PhD, you get a PhD, you get a PhD, everybody gets a PhD, all right? That's the way the system is designed, ladies and gentlemen, right now. And everybody thinks they know what they don't know. And that's the problem. So in this class, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to teach you legal contracts, because when I'm not teaching this class, I teach a contract law class. And when I say contract law, I don't practice law. I don't teach law. I teach the legal language of the contract. All right. So just so there's not a misunderstanding. I don't teach law. I'm not an attorney. I'm not teaching law. I'm teaching the legal language of the contract so that you understand it, the clients understand it. It's kind of an oxymoron if you ask me. We're not allowed to practice law yet in Pennsylvania. We have to have a 16-page contract that deals with the legal transfer of the property. So how is it that we're not allowed to practice law, but yet we're the ones that have to go over the contracts to explain the transfer of the property, which is a legal function? Yeah, all right, tomato, tomato. But in any event, ladies and gentlemen, you do need to understand this contract. It's 16 pages. You got to understand the home inspection process. You got to understand the appraisal process. You got to understand the title process. You got to understand the municipal certification process. You got to understand the loan process. And so there's a lot of variables in the contract. Time is of the essence. You got so much time to do a home inspection. You got so much time for an appraisal. You got so much time for a first deposit, second deposit. You got so much time to accept or reject the offer. And so this is all legal. And if you don't follow the contract and you don't do the time frame, you're out of time, you're out of contract. We'll see you in court. You see? So even though you're not allowed to practice law, you'll find yourself in the court of law if you don't follow the contract. And people who try to do this by themselves and buy and sell property do not understand the caveats and the legalities of a contract. and they get themselves in trouble. Most real estate agents, ladies and gentlemen, don't have this teaching that I'm going to give you. Most real estate agents only know how to do this. Initial here, sign here, initial here, sign here, initial here, sign here. But they could not explain the contract if you dared ask them. All they know how to do is say initial and sign, but they don't know how to explain the contract or the legalities of the contract. These are the things that you're going to be learning in my class, ladies and gentlemen. This is why when you read my reviews, you can see the sincerity of the reviews. You can see and feel what the student is trying to tell you. They learned way more than they ever thought they were going to learn. Plus, they can continue to come back to my class again and again and again to continue to learn, to continue to build your confidence. No other school offers this. So here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. My next class starts September 5th, and this is going to be my last class of the year because it's an 8-week class. So it'll be going right into September all the way to the end of October. And of course, into the holidays, I'm not going to run another class until next year. So this is going to be the last class for this year, September 5th. As long as you are signed up between now and September 1st, I can get you into the class. The class is filling up. I'm amazed. I'm very, very happy by how many signups we have and how many students are coming into the class. Plenty of room, don't get me wrong, but I'm just really looking forward to making so many people licensed real estate professionals this year. So I'm getting a lot of signups. We got plenty of room. It's done by a Zoom platform, ladies and gentlemen. So you don't really have to worry about the classes sold out because it's done by a Zoom platform. Since my students are from Pittsburgh, all the way to Philadelphia and all points in between, Erie, Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, Scranton, Collegeville, York, Philadelphia, Scranton, the whole 9 yards. Since my students are, and this is a state required class, are from the entire state of Pennsylvania, then the best way to run this class is through a Zoom platform. People in Pittsburgh could not drive to a school in Philadelphia. So this is why we do this class by a live streaming platform. And you get to see me, talk to me, ask me questions, just like you are doing right now. The only difference is I can't see you, you can't see me. I can't hear your questions, but in the classroom, you will be able to see each other, speak to each other, talk to each other, ask each other's questions, just as we were sitting in the classroom. The class is $598. I broke it down into 2 monthly payments, $299 for the first 4-week class and $299 for the second 4-week class. I'll also do other payment arrangements with you, ladies and gentlemen. So if you don't even have the $299 to get started, you do need $100 bare minimum to get started. So if you got $100 and you want to get started, I'll work out a payment arrangement with you. And so you'll get your transcripts when you make your final payment. So even if you don't have the $299, but let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, nothing for nothing. I already told you that. I'll certainly not let you in the class for free. That's a no-brainer because you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to have no skin in the game. You're not going to have an investment. Try to find another school that's offering everything that I'm offering, plus the repeat classes at $598. All right. So that's my fee. Certainly not setting the world on fire. It's more of a labor of love. But in any event, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy paying it forward. I'm very happy educating in real estate. It's one of my things. It's what I love to do. So if you would like to get the knowledge, you would like to get your real estate license and have that license to earn compensation in the real estate arena, then I encourage you to come to my last class this year, September 5th. I offer a morning class, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and I offer an evening class. And yes, if you think maybe, can I do a morning class on Tuesday, the evening class on Wednesday, the morning class on Thursday? The way my classes are designed, yes, I try to do the same chapters with both the morning and evening class. I can't guarantee that we are there because it depends on how many questions are asked in the class and how far we get behind and so forth. But for the most part, if we're doing chapter 13 in the morning class, we're doing chapter 13 in the evening class. If we're doing chapter 20 in the morning class, we're doing chapter 20 in the evening class. So for the most part, you can rotate as well to try to be more accommodating to your schedule. So this schedule is supposed to accommodate the 9 to 5, the 3 to 11, and the 11 to 7 shifts. So that's what this is supposed to do. So that everybody, no matter what your work schedule is, you should still be able to make either the morning class or the evening class. We can't do weekends anymore, ladies and gentlemen, because it's 12-hour days. sitting in front of a computer for 10, 12 hours, that's not going to work. These classes are 4 hours with a half-hour break. So 3.5 hours is just the right amount of time so that you don't get exhausted, your brain doesn't get fried. And this is why I broke it down this way for an 8-week period to give you the 75-hour requirement. So, ladies and gentlemen, send me a message, text. It's what do we call it? This is YouTube. I don't do this for subscribers or for the likes or anything like that, ladies and gentlemen. That's not really why I do this. I don't make any money off of this, so I don't even know what you're supposed to do. Leave a like or subscribe or anything like that. Ask your questions in YouTube and then I'll reply to them. That's fine. But again, ladies and gentlemen, go to onlinerealestateschoolinc.com. Go to my website. Go to my Shopify account and get some of the information and call me. Call me directly, 267-972-1084. You'll see it on my website, 267-972-1084. So if you want to talk to me directly, ask me some questions to get more information, I'll be happy to do that, ladies and gentlemen. August is an easier month for me. I don't have no classes until September. September 5th is my next class, as I just said. So I have a little bit of time. I also own my own brokerage, and I help a lot of people after they're done my class with employment. And we'll talk about that. After you pass this class, what can you do with that real estate license? You can do the work. You can go to work for a brokerage. You can do property management. You can work with developers. You can work with Fortune 500 companies. There's a lot of things that you can do and pursue with that real estate license. And we'll talk about this because I told you I'm going to teach you how to run a real estate business as well. That we will go over in the 8 weeks that we're together. And then afterwards, I'll even tell you the opportunities that will be available for you even afterwards, ladies and gentlemen. So you got really hardly anything to learn, to lose, everything to gain. This is your golden ticket. Once you get that real estate license, ladies and gentlemen, you should never be broke. You should never be unemployed. You will always have income coming in because of that real estate license allows you to have that income coming in. But if you're sitting on the sofa not doing anything, then that license is not going to earn you any compensation. You're not going to make it. So you need to know how to run a real estate business. The license allows you to earn the compensation, the money that comes with the real estate arena and the real estate business. And so that's how this all works, ladies and gentlemen. Even if you don't want a real estate license, you certainly want to come to my class and get the knowledge. And you can come to my classes again and again and again. So $299 is all you need to get started. You don't need the whole $598. And if you don't even have the $299, you can get started with $100. I'll work with you, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, I'm not making money. I'm not getting rich off of $598. So I don't want the $598 to be the reason that holds you back. Don't have the $299. Don't let money be the reason or the excuse that you use for not jumping into it. Invest $100 and get started and start seeing what you're going to be learning in my class. Trust me, it's well worth the $598 investment, but certainly worth $100. Take a shot, come into class. You could literally take the whole 8-week class and not make the rest of the payment. That's up to you. You won't get your transcripts. You won't be able to take the state exam, but I'm happy to give you the education. So if you want to take advantage of it, do so. I'm already giving you permission to do so. But I would prefer that you learn how to run a real estate business and get that real estate license. But if you want information, the most powerful information you can have in real estate, this is the way to do it, ladies and gentlemen. OnlineRealEstateSchoolIncorporated.com. I am Warren Nelson. I am licensed real estate broker in the state of Pennsylvania. I am the director of the school. I'll also be your instructor. I hope you decide to make the investment in yourself. I hope that you found that this free class that I do informative. I hope my chemistry works well with you. And I look forward to seeing you in my class. And I look forward to making you a licensed real estate professional this year. Be safe, be healthy, be happy, God willing. I'll see you when I see you. Be safe and enjoy life, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the class. Thanks for coming. Ciao.